Good evening, dear friends, and welcome to our show. Here we are where spirit meets story, truth and mystery with your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. We are journeying together through the deeper meanings behind today's world events, ancient wisdom, and the quiet whispers of the divine. We're going to reflect, remember, and reconnect. If this is your first time with us, welcome to the family. Make sure to follow us and ring that bell, check those checks, and click on that link to subscribe wherever you're watching and listening from wherever you are in the world. This show isn't just a broadcast. It's a broadcast with intention, with spirit, and with love. Now, here is Douglas.
Welcome to the show tonight, my friends. It's a pleasure to be here. We're going to talk about an interesting topic tonight. Do you believe that Armageddon is here? We're talking about the catastrophe that's been prophesized for centuries. We're going to have a little bit of a look on what the Bible has to say, but we're getting ready to find out: are we living the prophecy of Armageddon here today? Tonight, we're going to ask that question that's echoed throughout history. Many people are asking that very same question today as they watch the news. Wars continue in the Middle East. Political tensions grow between nations. It seems like we're out of control. Energy prices rise. Gasoline's going through the roof. Oil prices are going high. The price of gold is over $5,000 and holding steady. Is it going to go to $6,000, or is it going to go to $4,000 first and then going to go to $7,000 or $8,000 or $10,000? Well, that's a possibility. When events feel chaotic, people often turn to ancient prophecies like Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce or myself or Ross Peterson and Paul Solomon. One of the most famous prophecies in the Bible is the prophecy of Armageddon. People are mentioning that now. Are we in the end times? Is the world changing so fast and headed towards what the four horsemen prophesies in the book, which is basically famine, war, destruction, and ultimately death? What do you think? I want to ask you that question, and you can tune in by asking or participating in the show by stating your opinion in the chat, and we'd love to hear from you, wherever you are in the world. The world, by the way, is often wondered about where the word Armageddon came from. It appears only once in the Bible. Revelation 16:16 says, "And they gathered them together to the place which in Hebrew is called Armageddon." Armageddon refers to a location, not a time. Har Megiddo, or the hill of Megiddo, a place in ancient Israel where many historical battles occurred. Because of this history, it became a symbol of the final battle between the forces of good and evil. Are we at that time? The book of Revelations describes this time as a great upheaval before the final confrontation. That's found in Matthew 24, verse 6-7. "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Nation will rise against nations and kingdom against kingdom." And Revelation 6 describes the four famous horsemen, the pale or white, red, black, and I think it's white, representing death. Conquest, war, famine, and death. These are the symbols or stages that Armageddon is supposed to represent and go through. I believe we're in that pale horseman or white horseman, which is we have a chance. The first horseman has a chance to stop the onslaught of the other three, according to ancient prophecy. And that means that we need to change our ways rather quickly or directly. But here we are in the news today. The Israelis and American governments are, pardon the pun, hell-bent for leather to have war in the Middle East. And it is indeed taking place, even though there are many voices saying it's not a war, it's a skirmish, it's a bit of a disagreement. We haven't declared war yet, which of course is all camouflage. Pages in history were never meant to be literal predictions, but they were spiritual warnings about the conquests of human greed, violence, and pride. Are we living that history right here now today? I believe we are. Every generation that faces great uncertainty has wondered if it is living in the end times. Well, we have sort of proof, don't we? All the nations are gathering in the world. People are taking sides. People are providing military bases or they're providing weapons. And indeed, it seems the conflict, the historical hatred and frustration between the Israeli people and the Arab people, or in particular, the Israeli government and the Iraq government. Are we looking at this as the firming up and the actual presentation of this great battle? Why is it happening? What's going on? What's the cause? What do you think? Let me know. You know, many people wondered at different times in history that they were living through the same circumstances that we find ourselves. The fall of the Roman Empire, when the Black Death hit Europe and England, the world wars when they occurred, and the Cold War in the 60s with nuclear crisis happening in Cuba, and when President Kennedy spoke up and stopped the Russians from locating missiles in Cuba, basically a huge threat to the USA. Every one of them thought that they were on the verge of nuclear crisis. When this wars intensify in the Middle East, a region deeply tied to biblical history, it naturally reminds us of these prophecies, the four horsemen, the end times, a time where the great judgment is going to occur, when the 144 will rise up and be welcomed into heaven above. But there is a deeper message. It is not simply about destruction. This deeper message is about transformation. Transformation. The world always goes through times of great difficulty. We know that. You live long enough, you'll see in your generation that there have been ups and downs, there have been crises, there have been plagues. COVID was just a few years ago. Remember, 5 or 6 years ago, we were going through this earth-changing experience of going through this plague that surrounded the world. That was tied into the Mayan calendar. People were looking for the world to change in 2023, but rather in December 23rd in 2020, I believe it was. But now it happened a little bit later. It took time for it to develop into what was a plague around the world. And certainly people could say that was perhaps a time of great transformation because the world changed that day. The world changed in that year. And the Mayan calendar said the world was going to change in one day. I might have had the date wrong there, my friends, but the point is that it did change. In that 1 year, the world is never, ever going to be the same as it was then. It has changed today. But here we are today. Turn on the news, whatever you're looking at as your source of news, whether you think that the regular media is covering things up and you have your special websites for those enablers or those communicators of what's going on. Look at what's going on. Never mind the verbiage. Look at what's going on. There has been, in my opinion, an unnecessary war in the Middle East. It was provoked and it was initiated by the combination of the governments who started basically siding with the Israelis. I'm not taking sides. I'm saying it was a preemptive strike. The Americans attacked these countries in the Middle East. There was no attack. There was negotiations taking place. There were talks about how to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon or to have an enrichment process to make dirty bombs. But it never actually occurred. Just the threats, the rumors of war were enough to start a monumental attack against Iraq. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, not my opinion to say, but as we look at this time where we're going forward, the world is changing. It's changing right now. You know, the secret weapon of Iran and the Middle East people is they have the valve. It shuts off the flow of oil. And what happens to the world's economy? Oh my God, it's changed. The price of oil affects every industry. every industry, not just gasoline for your car, but all kinds of manufacturing. And someone, somehow, it's been found out, or somebody has pulled the trigger and shut off the valve when things happen in all areas of the world, in particular, starting from Venezuela. The Cuban people are starving for oil. Their economy is collapsing. In the Middle East, the same is going on. There's bombing of a refinery. There is the shutting off of the flow of oil through shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and this is stopping us cold in our tracks, is it not? It's a struggle, is it not? Many theologians interpret Armageddon not only as a physical war, but as a spiritual battle. And here on the Soul Report Live, that's the tact we're taking. This is a struggle between your fear and your faith, between power and compassion, between greed and justice, ending up in destruction and then, of course, renewal. You know, the yin and yang, the alpha and omega. This is the time the Bible ultimately ends not with destruction, but with hope. For instance, in Revelation 21, it states, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, and God shall wipe away every tear from their eyes." So even in the darkest prophecy, the message is ultimately one of renewal. I believe there is cause and effect for everything. I don't believe there's coincidence or chance. I believe there are paths and circumstances that we take in our life that at the moment in time, it's like looking at your hand up close. You cannot see the rest of your hand. You can only see the moment. But as time goes by, you get to see the bigger picture. And you understand more. So what's going on now in the Middle East is ultimately for humanity's good. But right now, it's not. 175 children lost their lives in a moment when a bomb came into their school in Iran, I mean. And what happened? No one took responsibility. The blame game was on the other opposing forces. It was their inaccuracy. It wasn't our bomb. We have accurate bombs. We're just killing people in small places, a dozen or two at a time. Where's the compassion? Where is the compassion? I'll bet you, I'm not going to do this, but I can say, I'll wager you that a lot of the people at the top of the economic structure who saw this coming, who were on the inside, and they knew that there was going to be a war, an attack, or bombing of Iran, they were long the markets for oil, and they still are. Today, there was a big turnaround when a word came from the president that he thought the war is, enough. It's concluding, or something to that effect. And the price of oil dropped, the price of gold went up, and the markets took off after 5 to 6, 7, 800 point drops every day for the last several days. In a moment, everything changed and turned around. What does that tell you? In a moment. Well, there are people on the inside who know what's going to be said. I'm being cynical here now, but I suspect that power and compassion balance we're talking about can migrate to greed and justice. Are people carrying on this situation of this battle for greed, or are they doing it for justice? Well, I'll tell you this, to try to change the regime in Iran is, well, mucho impossible. It just cannot be. Oz is going to show you a graphic coming up here in a few moments of the parliamentary system in Iran and the multiple layers. The supreme being, or the supreme ruler, I should say, is in charge emphatically. Here it is. You have the supreme leader. You have 3 undercurrents or supports that are supposed to watch over the supreme leader, the president, the judiciary, and the parliament. And then as a second backup, there is the Expediency Council, the Guardian Council, and the Assembly of Experts. Now, if you're looking at this chart, those dots are seats in the Expediency Council. There's seats in the Guardian Council. There's seats in the Assembly of Experts. Look at that. And they all go back to the supreme leader. the presidency and judiciary and parliamentary seats, or individuals, I should say, are just that. They're subordinate to the supreme leader. And all the way, look at that way the government is set up in Iran. We didn't understand that. We don't know that. It's not a parliamentary system like the British Empire in Canada. It's not a republic like America, where you have the president, the Senate, and the House. Look at that structure. How can we possibly assume to annihilate all those people to have a regime change? It cannot. So the idea of being able to pick and choose a new leadership for a country that's well established, for a country that has such a structure, and fanatically these people believe in their structure. The lower people at the end, at the bottom, I should say, these are the people that are suffering. The people at the lowest end of the social standing in Iran are the ones that are poor. They have no power, and they are certainly outside the influence and privileged of the leadership, or the privileged in the organization, the elite, shall we call them. So, by the way, they also support America. You know, they look for hope from America, that they can somehow be saved from this atrocity or from these extremes. The government in Iran, without a doubt, is brutal. They've killed off many people, thousands. Has been reported in the paper recently, you know, in the last few months, when there was protest. Solution to stop protests in Iran: kill the protesters. And that's evident with the reports that have been seen in the news. Are we consuming the good people? Is there indifference? What do you think, my friends? Let me know your comments. What do you think? You agree with me? You disagree with me? Or do you have some ideas of your own about this possibility that we're entering this time, this end times, where compassion is going out the window, where might makes right? And if you protest, or if you want to object, the answer that you get from the oppressive people, wherever they are in the world, is you're incarcerated, you're shipped out of the country, or you're executed. This is serious, serious time. But as we look out the window here in the West, we're okay. But it's pinching our pocketbook. Gas prices in particular, over $8 in California. Across the nation, it's almost $4, $3.50 to 80 cents on an average. That's hurting your pocketbook, and that's when you're taking notice of the suffering, and not only the suffering of the people there, but the suffering is taking place nation to nation. Many countries depend on oil. Oh my God, where's all those critics that are talking about free energy, like electrical energy and solar power and wind power? Where are they now? I'll bet you they're planning to get themselves a generator of some sort that depends not on oil or gasoline. The point being is that wherever you are, we're going through this time of extremes. Remember, this war in Iran came out of nowhere. I'm saying that in a broad brush sort of view. There's always been rumblings between the Israeli government. President Netanyahu has said for 47 years he's been waiting for this time to get a cooperative president of the United States to back him up. Remember, America used to be the policeman of the world. It used to be the safe haven for democracies. It used to be the measure that when somebody started to get over that line and started to take advantage of their people, when there was Herzegovina, and when we had that in Bosnia, had that atrocities, it was President Clinton that stepped in with aerial photography and did something that stopped the atrocities of genocide in the country. Why do we do this? What makes us so indifferent to people? What's going on? Let us know. Oz, you have a question.
Well, Samson from Facebook is saying, he's echoing the same thoughts. He says, where's the compassion for the people who are even stuck, in the Middle East and can't get home? And he says this takes him back to the 70s, to Vietnam. All they heard about was the war, in the same kind of dramatic situation. And many people at home just go through their normal daily lives, without thinking about it.
Well, I would add to that they don't want to think about it. They want to turn a blind eye. I don't want to get involved. Not my problem. As some people say, not my monkey, not my circus. Well, you're a part of this planet, each and every one of you. And that is a really good question. Where's the compassion? Where was the planning to get Americans out of the Middle East? Well, there was none. And then all of a sudden it's on the hurry up. And then all of a sudden it's kind of, oh, we've lost a few lives. Let's pay attention. American service personnel, God bless them for their service, and God bless them that they paid the ultimate price. But there was no planning. It seems to be that way. There was no compassion. It seems to be that there's an expectation that even more lives are going to be lost. There's a report of America starting a draft again. I think the Secretary of Defense, aka War, is planning that. Why? What's in their minds? Escalation? Negotiation or consideration? Doesn't seem like it. I remember the Vietnam War, and there was daily news of what was going on in Vietnam, and the cameras were there. And only when the people could turn on the TV, the good folks at home, and watch their sons and daughters being, I'm going to say, sacrificed, that's when there was huge protests in the world, in America, and it somewhat put pressure on the presidents and the powers that be to stop the slaughter of innocent people and the end of the Vietnam War. America's not done too well in winning wars. They're very good at starting them, but they're not too good at ending them. The Second World War, I've got to compliment. It was America's intervention towards the last part of the war that stopped the war, the Second World War. And then there was the Korean issue. We need to look at this as the never-ending war, and we have to stop this. This is up to you, my friends. Protests work, but pay attention. That caller that mentioned that, where is the compassion, even for the people to get out of the country? Poor planning shows indifference, shows lack of wisdom, lack of military skill, and shows that this particular time may be haphazard. My opinion, is that your opinion? Another question, Oz.
Yeah, Sybil from YouTube is asking, how much longer do Cubans have to wait before they get relief? Think it'll be a while?
Good question. This is somebody's going to call it collateral damage. I hate those words. I don't really hate them. I dislike them intensely. It shows such indifference. When is Cuba going to be given oil? Well, the meanies, the nasty people who have the power to let them have oil, they're holding it back on purpose. There was even a report that the president said, Cuba's next. They want to change the regime there. Who gave these people in our present world the power to change governments? Remember, as we pointed out with Oz showed it that parliamentary structure, there are thousands and thousands of people who want what they have now, the supreme leader. They don't want anything different. They don't want a new democracy. They don't want a different political system. It's theirs, and it has been going on for 3 generations now. They're not going to change. They're in power, and they've got their hands around the throat of the world with oil. What's going to happen if all of a sudden all the Middle Eastern nations, by hook or by crook or by force, okay, stop, we're not sending the West any more oil. The price of oil is going to go through the roof, $150 a gallon. And by the way, the president and the enablers don't control the price of oil. Did you notice that the price of oil went up on the commodities market? The commodities. That's where speculators trade. The oil in the reserves, the pipelines in transit in the tankers, that was all paid for by people who bought oil in the futures. In other words, April, May oil has already been bought and paid for. The spot market is where it actually is given. The real product is given or shipped to where it's supposed to be. But however, the price of oil and gasoline went up immediately. How can that be? People were paying for the gasoline in the future, not today, but the price of gasoline went up immediately, which means greed is taking effect. So as we look at this, why are people being so mean to those in Cuba or other places, the smaller countries, the medium-sized or small countries? Why are they doing this? We'll have to ask the powers that be, but we can speculate. They're doing it because they're trying to be let's call disruptive. They're being mean. It's cruel. What happens to hospitals when they run out of power? What happens to ambulances when they don't have gasoline? What happens to fire trucks and vehicles when they don't have gasoline to attend to fires? All of that by people who are wise in government know that these things are happening. Even your enemy needs a fire department. They need a policeman. They need a doctor. They need those things that are helpful to people. But without thinking, or let's say willfully being ignorant, there's a phrase for you, willfully being ignorant, they just don't care. And they're not attempting to look out for their neighbor. This is contradictory to Scripture. The Christ gave us two rules, one to love God with all our heart, and the other to love our neighbor as ourselves. Whatever our neighbor's skin color was, whatever their religious views, whatever their social standing, wherever they are in the world, we are supposed to love them. In other words, be moral and compassionate about them. This is not being done. What do you think, my friends? You got another question? Send it in here. I want to talk a little bit about gold as a sort of value during uncertain times and why discussions about rising gold prices frequently accompany geopolitical tensions. Oil markets also react quickly to instability in major producing regions, but economic cycles have always moved up and down throughout history. You know, not too long ago, periods of tension were followed by stabilizing and rebuilding. You think about that. So I ask, are we living in Armageddon? That is the question many are asking tonight. Many are thinking and contemplating this. Are you giving up? Do you just throw your hands up in the air and say, not my circus, not my monkey? I'm not involved? Well, if you live on this planet, you are. If you're in the southern hemisphere, maybe you can get away with it. You know, Australia, South America, something like that. In Hawaii, it's not going to affect you. But I had a vision just this morning that something's going to happen to the Pacific Ring of Fire. That is to say, that's that imaginary circle, a ring that goes around from Japan to Russia to North America, South America, and touches upon the south to Antarctica, and it goes back again to the Far East. Something's going to happen. I saw a ring on a bowl, and I saw the bottom falling out of it. There is going to be upheaval in the Pacific, specifically the Ring of Fire. It's going to affect Japan more than anything else, I believe. I had that vision this morning. You see, we're interconnected. When you're dropping bombs on one part of the world, and you think about this, Iran is full of gas and oil, and it has been, and the surrounding countries as well, the 14 countries that are oil producers there. What happens if one of those bombs goes down and starts a huge fire under the surface of the earth, under the strata, and ignites the gas and oil that's sitting there? Will it ever go out? No. Will it blow a huge hole in the earth, in the crust? Perhaps. Who's thinking about this? I ask you, is anyone? A long time ago, there was a client from Iran who had a dream or a vision and asked me about it. And in this dream or vision, she looked outside of her building and there was a crack in the earth. And in the crack, in the crevasse, she saw it was burning. It was burning underground. And that's where this comment comes from now. Is that going to take place? What would happen if we didn't have any gasoline or oil tomorrow? Oh my God, is anybody thinking of the possibility? Not on your life. Those people at the top are just betting long on oil and gas. West Texas crude oil, sweet oil, whatever it's called. They're just enjoying the millions of dollars they're making on the price of oil and gasoline going up. Do they care? I don't know. We'll have to ask them. What do you think? Oz, another question.
Yes. The question is it possible to have both worlds where one is at war and another is at peace?
Apparently it is, depending on your geographical location. Not necessarily a world, but remember, this is, my friends, this is a world of duality. This is how it's supposed to be. Somewhere the two extremes of war and love or peace, they're supposed to come together so that we can learn how to love each other. Not necessarily like each other, but learn to be moral with each other. That's what love thy neighbor means, is to be just and moral. You don't have to like your neighbor. You can disagree with your neighbor, but you ought not to attack or cause harm to your neighbor willfully. Is it possible? Is up and down possible at the same time? Okay, let me show you. If this is down or ground level and this is up, what's this called? More up? What's this called when you go the other way? Is it down? Is it more down? You see, it's all relative to your thinking. So is it possible? I got to say no. Is two extremes coming together like, fire and water. They exist in the same world, in their respective domains. As long as they don't cross over and attempt to annihilate one another, they can coexist. And that's how it's supposed to be. Air, earth, water, fire, they're supposed to exist. Coexist, I mean to say. So the answer to the question is it possible that we can have war on one side and peace on the other? It's possible. People can fight and disagree. They don't have to kill each other, and people can love and be harmonious and brotherly and sisterly love for one another. But it won't actually be until the end of time when the two sides come together and they say, the devil talking to Christ, shaking hands and saying, we got them here. We finally got them to arrive in the future at some moment in time when they can get along with each other, realizing that we're all weak, we have extremes, we have tendencies to want to be destructive, but somehow we put a cap on them. We choose not to be bad today. We choose to get along today. When we arrive at that point, we'll understand that coexistence with all things in nature is what we're supposed to be. We choose how to act and react. We don't react in a knee-jerk reaction. When you see animals fighting, one bites the other one bites back. In life, when somebody bites you, you're not supposed to bite them back. You're supposed to stand back and realize you don't want to be involved in that. But what's the problem? How can we resolve this issue? Oh, you want a bone? Here, have mine. In the good book, it talks about that when the Christ was walking and his disciples were in a caravan. Somebody came and claimed that their cloak was stolen. Christ said, here, take mine. He took it off his back and he gave it to the person. No more conflict, no more war. The person was adamant that somebody in Christ's group had stolen their garment. So they traveled on. The caravan continued on. Sometime a little bit later, somebody came running up and gave Christ back his cloak. They said, oh, it was misplaced. The other person found theirs, so we come to give yours back. And Christ took it and said, okay, thank you. And all the other disciples were going like, wow, how dare you accuse us and this and that and the other thing. And it was like, who cares? I gave them my cloak. They were cold. No battle. This is how you keep your peace of mind. This is how, when you come into confrontations, how you're supposed to act. Oh, you're hungry? Here, have my dinner. Here, you're cold? Have my coat. Because when you do that, it's not being weak. It's understanding that God will provide another one for you. Giving away causes prosperity to flow back to you. One of the teachings of Christ. Another question, Oz.
Yep. One is on the stock market. What are your thoughts on the stock market? Will it crash?
It did. Because here's the stock market. It's made of two things. Fear and greed. Fear and greed. Everybody that goes into the stock market expects to gain. A lot of people lose because, oh, it went up, it went down. Their stock price went up and down. Oh, it went down, so they sold out. Then it went back up. Oh my God, they're mad at themselves and they bought back in, and then it came back down again. Oh, and they sold out again. So fear moving the market with fear alone. The professionals don't do that. They're disciplined. They know it's the up and down. They're professional. That's their environment. And they go in there as a business. They go there to gain. But make no mistake, every industry has an emotion attached to it. Insurance people, what do? They're selling you fear. Aren't they? They're in the fear business. You're going to die. You better buy some life insurance. Not for your good, but for the benefit of somebody else, your spouse or your family. But you're going to die, so you better have some life insurance. The same for medical insurance. You're going to get sick one day, and you better pay us now insurance because we're going to help you out when you get sick in the future. Whether you do or not, it's a different question. The same as automobile insurance. You're going to get into an accident. You better have insurance. And of course, humans being humans, we do. But the point is, it's fear. Some might say, no, it's not, Douglas. It's just being careful, it's being prudent. That too. Because there are people out there that, well, they need driving instruction a lot more than they get. People make mistakes. A policeman once said, there's a lot of good drivers out there. The reason they get in mistakes is because they get distracted. That means they're looking out the window. That means they're combing their hair. That means they're texting. They're distracted. And because they're in their comfort zone, they let their guard down. And that's when the bad things happen. Anyway, back to the point. So as we go through this time about stock markets, I've predicted stock markets going up. I've predicted stock markets going down. I've predicted commodities going up and down. You can too, my friends. By using your dreams, you'll be able to have a dream to know that if you're going to invest in the stock market, what to invest in, something that is fundamentally the same pattern. If you have an interest in metals, or you have an interest in groceries, you have an interest in wood products, you have an affinity is the word I'm looking for, you will know if they're going to go up and down in value. And then you have to teach yourself how to invest in that marketplace because it has rules, as all operations in the world have. They have rules, and you cannot just walk into the stock market and expect to be successful. You can have beginner's luck, that's true. But as you seek out a mentor, as you become familiar, as Mr. Buffett had to say, Warren Buffett, if you know how to balance or how to handle stocks, you can increase and gain. Now, is it wrong to seek to have gain and prosperity? No, it's just to understand fear and greed. And you temper them between yourself, and so you're not greedy. You know the stock's going to go up, it goes up, you take your 50% or 20% and gain, and you leave some for the next person. You don't try to get 99% of that move and then dump the stock on somebody else who's going to lose, because there's always two sides to a trade, the seller, the buyer, and they're betting against each other. The seller thinks it's going to go down, the buyer thinks it's going to go up. So being able to temper yourself and saying, okay, I've got my 25%. That's enough for me. I'm stepping aside. Let somebody else who I'm going to sell my stock to, let them gain if they think there's a little more. This is the way you avoid the extremes of greed and fear, and you basically learn how to handle your emotions. But again, the basis of markets, the stock markets, the commodities markets is, I'm talking now for speculators, is greed and fear. You can overcome this by putting limits on your desires, having moral rules, and you'll do well. Okay, there's a 15% rule. If it goes up 15%, you sell it. It comes back down, you buy it back, whatever it happens to be. This is how you're earning a living in those marketplaces. There's nothing wrong with them. Matter of fact, I've done well myself in previous times, and it's okay to learn how to do that. But it takes a learning curve, an effort, a desire, and desires are good as long as they're not extreme. Next question, Oz.
Yeah. Should we take a break and do a little ad?
We can do that too. We'll get back to, are we living in Armageddon? What kind of world are we creating right after this break? What kind of world?
Are you searching for clarity, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of the spiritual world around you? Meet Douglas James Cottrell, PhD, a visionary author and teacher who's helped countless people transform their lives. His books are a gateway to profound insights, offering guidance, inspiration, and the tools you need to unlock your full potential. From unlocking your intuition to discovering spiritual truths, Douglas's books are your trusted companions on the path to personal growth. Don't wait. Start your journey today. Visit his website douglasjamescottrell.com to explore and purchase his life-changing work. Your next breakthrough is just a page away.
And we're back. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. Oz is here with me, and we're taking your questions from the audience tonight. Armageddon, questions you might want to ask. Do you believe we are living in prophetic times? Do ancient prophecies still apply to our modern world? Are today's conflicts spiritual battles as well as political ones? What do you think? What role should faith play during times of global uncertainty? Does fear help us prepare, or does hope guide us better? What do you think? Another question, Oz.
Yeah, from Celtic Seer on YouTube, they're asking, will we manage to avoid World War II?
3.
3. I missed one of them.
we did manage to live World War II. That was just before my time. Anyway, my father was in the service. He was in the Royal Canadian Air Force. God bless him. I had my uncle Barker, and was also, he was wounded in Italy. So will we survive World War III? Yes, we will, but the world is going to change. The world is never going to be the same after what's going on right now. Think of all the hot spots and wars that are going on. What happened to Russia and the Ukraine? Well, that's still going on, but the war in Russia and Ukraine changed the way warfare has been acted. Drones are now the weapon of choice. Missiles, those Tomahawk missiles that they talk about, like they're peanut missiles they're $2 million a piece. And when you see them going and bombing up a truck or bombing up something small, you got to say, was that a fair trade? $2 million to blow up a $20,000 truck. So the idea is that as we start to look around and see what's changing, the war in Russia, and it's been 4 years now, by the way, my folks, how time flies. It's been 4 years since Russia invaded Ukraine. And somehow the Ukraine people are still hanging on. It could have been resolved perhaps by people who wanted to resolve the conflict, but that's a question for a different day. The thing in Venezuela, look what happened. The leader was deposed, and all of a sudden the oil industry was seized. Oil tankers were commandeered. Military escorts were happening. People in rowboats and speedboats were bombed with a Tomahawk missile. 5 or 6 or 10 people at a time murdered. For what? Because they were suspected of being carriers of drugs. Well, there's already a whole system called the Coast Guard, and those people weren't guilty of anything. They were just suspected, and yet they paid the price of being murdered while they were shooting across water. Maybe they were bad guys, I don't know. But we've gone from that to what's going on in the atrocities in Africa. We've seen things in faraway places where the ISIS people in Africa are now murdering, decapitating children. We've seen flare-ups all over the world, tensions between Taiwan and China. You know, it wouldn't be a surprise if China was to simply walk into Taiwan. After all, Taiwan's part of China, just a different society. I'm not saying there's atrocities there. I'm just saying it would be the time at hand for these atrocities or for these things to happen as they are throughout the world. North Korea has not stood down from its tendencies of being a suppressive government. We look at the battles going on, even the Western-friendly, countries where there are, let's say, roughing the feathers of different people. The Epstein files, that's changed the way the world has thought. I've been constantly amazed to see how far-reaching Epstein was able to influence people from all walks of life, higher up life, I might say, from Bill Gates to Prince Charles King Charles and his brother Andrew. Think about that. And I'm not saying King Charles was involved. I'm just saying the royal family has suffered at that. Different people in different places, and it's still going on right now, where this conflict is extending throughout the world. So the question is, there's still wars going on in places that's kind of subdued in the nature of the press. But look what's happening in the Middle East now with this oppressive regime that just killed thousands of people in Iran, is now at war and holding its own. It's holding its own. If the governments want to send boots on the ground in there, it will be a catastrophe. These are people who defend their country as vigorously as you would be defending your country. Remember, the Bible says, put yourself in the other person's perspective. Treat your neighbor as you want to be treated. What would you feel like if there was a force showing up in Washington who wanted to change the way the government regime or government acted? What would you do? You'd fight tooth and nail to stop it. Well, not only is that going on in Iran, these are fanatical people that have sworn oaths to God that they will protect their Ayatollah, their supreme government, their religious leader, the same as anywhere in the world. So getting back to the point, there are wars going on all over the world right now. People are so angry. There are teenagers shooting other teenagers, stabbing them. It's in the news every day. There was something in New York where there were 2 young men, 18 and 19 years of old. They said they were influenced by ISIS. What does an 18 or 19-year-old person know about the world? And they said they were influenced. They made homemade bombs and they were throwing them at people in New York City. And they didn't take any rights. They said they were influenced by ISIS, and they were hoping that they would kill more people. There were only 3 people killed in the Boston bombing, and they were hoping to kill more. Fortunately, God intervened, and those foolish young men who for the rest of their life are going to be incarcerated, they've thrown their life away as quickly as they throw those bombs inept bombs into a crowd, they've thrown their life away. For what? They don't know. For idealism, they went against their country. They're traitors. They're foolish. They're misguided. And God knows the forces of negativity or darkness or in the spirit world have somehow got these people, these two men in particular, to throw their life away. This is in the news recently in the last couple of days, my friend, in America. If you're not up on that, I know we're listening to talking to a worldwide audience here, but they threw their life away. I feel sorry for them because they are so foolish. They threw their life away for something that they were, the idealism, something they were listening to, an enemy of the state. I don't understand it, but people throughout history do it. They turned against their own country. They believe, the greener pastures, the grass is always greener on the other side, and they throw their life away. That's a shame. That is a shame. So what is meant when we awaken responsibility? Well, Armageddon is, in the deepest sense, it's a warning about what happens when humanity loses its moral compass. That's what is going on right now. We've lost our moral compass. But the same scriptures that warn us about conflict also promise renewal. They remind us that compassion, wisdom, and courage still shape the future. Out of all the conflicts, communist Russia, when I was growing up, oh my God, the communist this, the communist that. What happened to communism? Well, after 40 years, it collapsed. It imploded. The USSR is no more. Now there's Russia. What happened? Well, negativity cannot stand by itself. It has no footing, no foundation. It's based on human emotion like greed, envy, pride, selfishness, greed, and I can't stand. Love is the only emotion. Morality, brotherly love, sisterly love, morality and balance, taking care of each other, helping the poor, helping the infirm, helping the handicapped, helping little children that have handicaps. This is what sustains us. This is our badge of courage. This is how we become human beings. Anything less than that, and you're not a human being. You're something different. Perhaps we should ask a more powerful question. What kind of world are we choosing to build tomorrow? Don't be shy. Don't turn away. Don't be violent. May your protests be like Mahatma Gandhi, peaceful, with a handful of salt. That man changed the world. The British Empire crumbled because of his peaceful protest. And the British government had to give up part of its empire. Matter of fact, a huge part in India. It was something that was built on, again, the process of immorality, of indifference, of taking advantage of the poor. And the British Empire dissolved itself. It still exists in its remnants form, but remember, as always, a handful of salt, Mahatma Gandhi preaching peaceful protest won the day. Now, he did have to go on some starvation situations where he refused to eat when his side and his people got out of line, but nobody wanted the karma of killing the great Mahatma, and so they went back to choosing peace over violence. Even though there was hatred, there was grief, there were atrocities on both sides, they learned to forgive and possibly forget. But he did it with a handful of salt. Check out his biography. So the people that we're living with today, it's the choices we make right now. And if we understand that, here's something else from my amigo. This is the AI 2 Minutes of Soul Wisdom. This is directly from AI. Here it goes, quote, "Friends, if tonight's topic makes you uneasy, remember this. Human beings have believed the end of the world was near many times before. Wars, plagues, political upheavals, natural disasters, every generation eventually faces moments that feel overwhelming. But here is a quiet truth that history teaches us. The world rarely ends. Instead, it changes. Civilizations pass through cycles, tension, conflict, correction, and renewal. When people read prophecies about Armageddon, they often focus on the destruction. But many spiritual leaders remind us, as we're doing here tonight in the Soul Report Live, that the deeper meaning of those texts is not destruction, it is transformation. Armageddon, in its spiritual sense, represents the battle between the lower instincts of humanity and its higher wisdom. Fear versus compassion, greed versus fairness, violence versus understanding. And that battle does not happen only on distant battlefields. It happens inside every human heart. So perhaps the question is not whether Armageddon is happening somewhere in the world. The real question is this: which side of that inner battle are we strengthening? Every time someone chooses patience instead of anger, kindness instead of cruelty, truth instead of deception, the better future wins a little more ground. So tonight, do not let the word Armageddon frighten you. Instead, let it remind you that the future of the world is shaped not only by government and armies, but by the character of ordinary people, just like you. And it signs off, and that includes you. That's tonight's advice from my amigo. That's the name I call my AI. So how about that, my friends? What do you think of that? You think AI has wisdom for us? Let me know. Another question on us. We have a few more minutes in the show.
Yeah, got a question here from Honda Cat on YouTube, who wants to know if there's any updates on the hollower from your book.
I'm hollering tonight. I was just thinking about that prediction about the hollower. It could be me. Hollering tonight. Here I am. I'm giving you my 2 cents worth. Yeah, it's coming. It's the time for the hollower to come by. That people don't know. Years ago, I predicted there would be coming a voice of hope in the world. Some people think it's me. Some people it's yet an undisclosed person. But I think the hollower is not far away from being a public figure. Thank you for that reminder. Thank you that that was a good question and a little bit nostalgic there. Another question.
Yeah, she sent a sunny face, or he. I'm sorry, I don't know. Let's see. So, the question here from Celtic Seer. So, are you saying that these wars? How much longer will these flashpoints linger?
2028 begins to turn the tide. By 2030, we'll sort of be getting back on track. And somewhere between 2030 and 2033, we're going to be back to normal. So I'm predicting for the next 4 to 7 years, we're going to go through these flashpoints. We're going to go through these times of extremes. I hope that answers the question. I could be right, it could be wrong, but here's the real thing, my friends. People aren't paying attention to the planet. We have severe weather. I predicted on our Sunday service a few months ago that there was going to become something terrible that was going to happen on the East Coast. It turned out to be that weather bomb, and it affected. I saw ladies, all the mothers going to out some rickety sort of land out to an island, and they saw up in the northeast something bad was coming, and they ran back. That rickety path, when I looked at a map, looked like Long Island, and Long Island got plastered along with the whole area. So the weather and the extremes, droughts. Think about it. We've had fires in California that are uncontrollable. We've had huge ice storms, colder here than any time else. We've had these weather bombs that are happening. So we're aware of the weather, but in the moment. Now that the warm, sunny weather is here, we're forgetting about that cold spell, the cold times. But earthquake activity and volcanic activity are speeding up. Pay attention to these extremes. The earth is offended. The earth is rebelling in its way. Storms, oceans rising in temperature because of the underwater heating up taking place from the center of the earth. I predicted years ago that the earth's core was spinning at a different speed than the crust, and that friction was causing the oceans to heat up. I made that public on CFRB in Toronto. Here we are, the oceans are heating up. I had a dream vision not too long ago where whales and sharks were coming right up onto the shoreline. Deep sea creatures are coming up to the shoreline. Why? What's going on in the water? Okay, Mount Etna and Mount Vesuvius are supposed to erupt at the same time. Well, both of those have been rumbling. Mount Etna has had a few eruptions, but when they both go off at the same time, that's the key that starts the countdown for the other earth changes or volcanic activity. But if you want to pay attention, look and see if you can get a map or reporting device, and you'll see that volcanic activity, earthquake activity, storm activity that are in extremes are taking place on the planet now. Droughts, heat waves. It was a few years ago, not too long ago, the natives in Norway, the native people, we would call them the Inuit, or the people who live with dog sleds and way up north. They reported the stars were going south. Stars going south? Well, actually, the planet is rotating back, and the stars look like they're going south. Our planet is wobbling on its axis. Are we paying attention? The oceans are heating up, which is causing the jet stream to move in different directions. Bad weather used to come from Alaska down underneath Hudson's Bay and out to the east coast of Canada, Maine, and Newfoundland. Now the storms are coming from Texas up towards Maine, a completely different vector. This is what's going on. I'm going to put this out today because a dear friend Patty had this vision or dream just last weekend that the price of potatoes are going to go through the roof. They're going to be very expensive. On other shows, I predicted the price of coffee going up and other commodities, but this specifically, we're going to give a shout out to Patty because she was brave enough to mention this at our service, which, if you want to know more about, is Many Mansions International Ministries, or mmsc.church, and we have a service on the YouTube every week at 1 o'clock Eastern. You're welcome to join, my friends. But anyway, Patty made this. She had this vision. She's part of our group, and she saw that the price of potatoes were going to go up. It's March the 9th. It's 8 p.m. my time. Let's see what happens about this, how long it takes for the price of potatoes to go up. Another lady, I'm going to call her Carla, in New Mexico, 4 years ago, had the same dream that the price of potatoes were going to go up and that potatoes were going to be scarce to get. The common potato being hard to get. She also, in that same vision, saw potatoes being grown in bags. Not paper bags, although I guess it's possible, but in material bags. And if you check it out, I'm not making any money. I never invented this, but if you look online, you'll find that there are people who make bags made out of different material that you can put a potato plant in there, grow potatoes, and then there's a little door on the side. You open it up, you reach in, you grab a potato, and you close the door so the plant keeps producing potatoes. Who'd have thought? I was gobsmacked when I first came across that. So, word to the wise. Tonight's prediction, stock up on stuff. stock up on potatoes in particular, if you like potatoes. Now, I know there are people who are vegan and vegetarian and people who are carnivores and they like to eat meat. People with the Mediterranean diet, which is one I prefer. Whatever your tastes are, but it's time to stock up because something's going to happen to the potato crop this year. Okay, so people, we're just getting near the end of the show here. So I have a timeline. I wanted to mention this. Times people thought Armageddon was happening throughout history. They believed that they were living in the final days in 70 AD with the fall of Jerusalem. When the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, many early Christians believed the end of the world had begun. And for them, I guess it would have looked like it was. So their life changed permanently for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Year 1000, across parts of Europe, people feared the new millennium would bring the apocalypse. I think in the year 2000, there was much to do about, oh my God, the world was going to fall apart. It was going to stop dead in its tracks because all the computers only went up to the year of 1999. Well, somehow the year 2000 happened and the airplanes didn't fall out of the sky and the millennium, we adjusted. In the year 1347, the Black Death, I referred to earlier in the show, the plague killed millions of people across Europe. Many believed it was the biblical end of days. And I'm certain with the Black Death, just like we suffered through COVID, the fear was great. In 1666, the Great Fire of London, because the number 666 or 666 appears in Revelation, people thought the fire signaled the apocalypse. That was in the year 1666 or 1666. World War I in 1914, the scale of global war convinced many that Revelation prophecies were unfolding. I mean, never before in the world did we have a world war where all of the planet were involved somehow, except maybe for those faraway islands where people lived in mud huts. They didn't have any idea that there was a world war on. In World War II, 1939 to 1945, Hitler himself has been credited, was sometimes described as the Antichrist in sermons of the time. Well, we've heard that of late of certain individuals are here in the world now being somewhat also 666 and the Antichrist. Cold War 1950 to 1960s, my era when I grew up. Nuclear weapons made people fear humanity could destroy itself overnight. Check out the missile crisis when President Kennedy prevented the President Khrushchev and the Russia from sending missiles into Cuba. Always been a tender spot for America, having bombs 90 miles away from the coast of America. In the year 2000, as I mentioned before, many predicted Y2K fears, technological collapse and global chaos. Didn't happen, but everybody was afraid of it. People were sending their data to India on disk to have it transcribed digitally so that they could get up to the year and then not be suffering data losses back in the day. Today, once again, global tensions lead people to revisit ancient prophecies. We're doing that tonight. History shows something different, which is most important. And that is this, my friends. Humanity repeatedly survives moments that feel like it's the end. What do you think? Are you a survivor? What do you think? Can you get by this time? You can. But like the Boy Scouts model, be prepared. Be prepared. If you have a dream that you need more coffee, go buy some extra coffee, maybe enough to at least last you for 6 months or longer. I had a dream, I mentioned this to Dream Vision not long ago, the price of coffee was going up. I don't drink much coffee, but I got 10 canisters of coffee. Maybe I could trade it with other ones. You have to be practical with prophecy. I'm a practical Christian. I was baptized as a Christian. I live in the West as a Christian, and the Messiah was prophesied in all the world's ancient religions that an individual was coming into the world that would change the world, would overcome evil, and show us the path that we could follow so that we're not consumed by evil, that we allow more light in our life. And the 2 commandments he gave was to love God with all your heart. In other words, be respectful. Know that God is providing everything, therefore be grateful for every breath you take, for every time you live a day, for every event that happens. Be grateful. Some are not so nice. They're bitter pills to swallow, but they're good medicine to cure the disease, ego, pride, etc. Be grateful to God Almighty and love God in that way. And the second and most important practical way to develop or follow in the footsteps of the Messiah is to love your neighbors as you would love yourself. And again, it doesn't mean you have to like them, but to be morally just with them, to put yourself in their situation, put yourself in their shoes. There's a proverb that says, you want to know your enemies, walk 1,000 steps in their footsteps, take 1,000 steps in their life, and you'll come to understand and like them. The best way to overcome an enemy, make them your friend. I think that's Abraham Lincoln said that. Fear does not, it's not the motive that people should be engaged in. Fear is becoming, or rather humanity is becoming more peaceful rather than more dangerous. Now you have to have respect, you have to be prudent, you have to be balanced, but to be simply kind to people is a way of being loving to your neighbor. Remember, they're not the same color, they don't believe the same way you believe, they have different customs, they like different foods, they have different ways they relate to their families, to their tribes, to their clans, to their villages. But one thing I found in traveling the world is the cliches are the same. Mas o menos, more or less, comme ci, comme ça. Different languages meaning the same thing. So what gives you hope when the world events feel chaotic? Sit down. Where are you today? Don't worry about tomorrow or next week. Be prepared for tomorrow and for next week. But where are you today? You're safe right now. Wherever you are in the world listening to my voice, if you're not in a place where there's conflict, where there's death, where there's war, you're safe. And if those people, wherever they are living in those conditions, know that there is at least a group of people here who are praying for your welfare, we pray to God Almighty that the leaders will have wisdom and morality, and they will take their responsibility for looking after their charges, their communities, the people that they have authority over. And we pray they will be wise, because if they are not, and because if they take advantage, and because if they're indifferent, and they do not take care of the people they're in charge or have authority over, woe be to them. Because what they're putting out, their indifference, their cruelty, their death, it's going to come back to them and their families and all that they hold dear. This is a spiritual law. It's not punishment. It's cause and effect. One of my favorite tools that I use for sermons is a boomerang. I have a double-edged sword, and I also have a tuning fork. The tuning fork to be in tune with God Almighty. The double-edged sword means your tongue cuts both ways. Watch what you say. Your tongue is the steering rudder of your ship or life. And the boomerang, what you do, good thoughts, good words, good deeds, you're throwing out, they come right back. Better to throw up kindness, don't you think? So this is tonight's show. We're happy that you're here tonight. Thank you, Oz, for taking care of the production of the show. This is Jack Balick as co-producer with myself. I'm your host, Dr. Douglas James Cottrell. I want to wish you the absolute best. I want this word of hope to get out there. And maybe this is the beginning of the hollerer, because I've been hollering here tonight. If you like the show, if you like what I've done, please subscribe. And by the way, we're going to move to a new platform. Next week, we'll have a new platform. We won't be using the Riverside one we're on tonight, but you should be able to find us without any trouble by logging in to the YouTube Sean. We'll have more exciting guests coming up. We have 3 or 4 guests already. I'm going to say desiring to be on the show. They've been on my show, The Global Village, before, and they like our platform. I trust you do too. Do everything you can to share this video with people that you know, people who want some answers. I'm here, I'm guided from above, and I'm here to give you what I think is the truth. And maybe, just maybe, I can point you in the right direction a little bit, and you can find some inner peace. I want you to develop your spiritual abilities and gifts so that you too will be able to contact the higher dimensions and to find your inner way. So I'm going to say goodnight. We'll look for you right here at the same time, a different platform. So if you want to email us, if you want any information, it's thesoulreportlive@gmail.com, and we'll be more than pleased to put you on our mailing list or to get in contact with you to show you where we're going to be next week. But look for us on YouTube. You should be able to find us. So I'll say goodnight on behalf of Oz, who's working behind the curtain tonight, and to all those out there in the world, have a peaceful and more prosperous day. May God provide all aspects of life. And thank you to the audience, wherever we might be. We appreciate that. Okay, thank you, my friends. Oh, by the way, there's my books behind. I'll give a little commercial thing, douglasjamescottrell.com. Okay, good night, my friends. See you next week.